Welcome to BizTalk. I'm Mikhail Raj. Today we focus on Malaysia's tourism and travel sector. And Malaysia has set a target of 30 million tourist arrivals and 100 billion ringgit in tourist receipts next year, which is actually a Visit Malaysia year. And tourism is the third largest contributor to the nation's foreign exchange and a vital component of the country's GDP. And a major platform to increase tourist arrivals is the highly popular Malaysian Association of Tour and Travel Agents, or Matta Fair. So the 40th edition of the Matta Fair just ended last weekend in Kuala Lumpur. So the questions that come to mind is that, are we on track to meet the targets for tourist arrivals, 30 million, and the receipts of 100 billion ringgit? And not forgetting some of the challenges and issues confronting the tour and travel sector. Have we resolved them? The full details on BizTalk. Welcome back. For more on the outcome of the Matta Fair, which was held last weekend in Kuala Lumpur, we have in the studio Nigel Wong. He is the Honorary Secretary General of the Malaysian Association of Tour and Travel Agents, or Matta. Hi Nigel, welcome to BizTalk. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Must have been a really busy weekend for your last, because I myself went for the Matta Fair on Sunday. There was practically no elbow room at the PWTC, and there was a fire, I understand, and all that. But I think basically, from what I understand, Malaysians were spoiled for choice. There were so many packages, and this is good. But obviously, I might want to ask, will this translate to expected tourist arrivals and tourist receipts, the targets that I mentioned? So the question is, so how was the outcome of the latest edition of the Matta Fair in terms of sales or interest and packages offered to tourists and travelers compared with Matta 2018?
Okay, Mike, so I think to understand what the Matta Fair is about, we first have to understand who are the exhibitors in the fair and why it's become so popular, right? So besides tour and travel agents, of course, which make up the bulk of the exhibitors, we're also talking about a lot of industry partners, predominantly airlines, transporters, and not just inbound or domestic rather, but also to other outbound destinations. So the popularity of the fair comes about because of simply one thing, the amount of choice you have at the fair, right? Now, in terms of how well the fair has been doing, I would have to say that for the last 4 to 5 to even 6 editions, we have actually seen a steady increase in growth in terms of the number of people coming to the fair, the amount spent, both outbound as well as domestic. Right? So for example, this year we have just got our rough figures in, and already we are looking at about nearly 101,000 visitors to the Matta Fair itself over the 3 days. And at this point in time, we have clocked in about 200 over million in sales turnover.
So which
overall.
means it can be higher, you know?
Yeah, actually it can be higher. In fact, we're still waiting for the reports of some of our exhibitors to come in. Last March, for example, we hit the 220 million mark. And this year we're expecting to probably be anywhere from 200 to 220 as well.
Okay, based on all that you said and all that, are we in a good position to realize the targets, the 30 million tourist arrivals and the 100 billion receipts and all that, when you compare in 2020 and you want to compare to the end of 2019 and what has happened in 2018? Are we on board? Are we on the right track?
Okay, we have to look at tourist arrivals into Malaysia from two perspectives. Okay, so first is what we classify as domestic travel. That's basically Malaysians traveling within the country. And of course, what we term as inbound travel, which are foreign tourists coming to Malaysian shores. Now, to answer your question, the Matta Fair itself is a good reflection of domestic travel. To give you an idea, we dedicate about two full halls just to domestic travel. And already figures are showing that our exhibitors have clocked up about 40 million in sales. And this is actually one of the largest domestic components of any fair.
That's like 40 million out of 200 million, right?
Yeah, 40 million out of 200 million.
Do you think that's significant?
It is, because look, the cost of an outbound package itself, all right, is far higher. Flights, currency exchange, that sort of thing, you know. Whereas domestic travel, we're talking in terms of ringgit. You know, for 40 million, that's a very, very good figure. You know. Now, to answer your question, if we're talking about inbound travel and whether we're going to meet our targets, let's just say that we are very, very encouraged by this year's arrivals so far. Now, Tourism Malaysia hasn't released the full figures yet. This will always come a bit later. But already we see that some markets, for example in China, have seen a slight increase. So any increase is fantastic. But we've also seen both the public and private sector start to step up promotion.
But do they do their promotions on their own, individual companies, or do they sort of come with Matta to have a joint promotional campaign in some of these markets, you know?
Okay, we do both. So the private sector does go out on its own, but they also join together with Matta. Matta facilitates, you know, we bring our agents to certain events overseas, business-to-business events. We also join Tourism Malaysia in many of the sales missions. And this is actually one of the key factors that will determine our inbound arrivals for next year. Apart from all the other promotional activities that Tourism Malaysia and the private sector are doing on their own as well.
So basically the idea that you paint is that everybody needs to pull in the same direction, no? And generate this ecosystem that will really help Malaysia to achieve the targets that have been spelled out for 2020. But nevertheless, I'd like to go back to what Dr. Mahathir said, that one of the ways to really boost in-flights and tourism and travel in Malaysia is to strengthen the flight connectivity, you know, from high-yield markets into Malaysia. Can you throw some light exactly what do you mean by this, and what have we done to enhance this flight connectivity?
Okay, so as we all know, flight connectivity is actually one of the lifelines for almost any industry, right? And particularly so for tourism. So what Tun has actually said, he has hit the nail on the head, spot on, right? So what we should be doing in terms of, let's say, our national carriers, you know, Malaysian Airlines, all right, and even our low-cost carrier provider AirAsia, we should be looking at strengthening you know, routes, maybe even adding on more flights for certain key routes as well to facilitate more inbound tourists into Malaysia. Now, this doesn't preclude all our other supporting airline partners around the world. I mean, familiar names: Emirates, Qatar, Cathay Pacific, British Airways, a whole lot of them, right? The key thing is to ensure that Malaysia is seen as a attractive tourist destination. And once we do that, airlines will start to see the viability of putting on more flights, increasing the frequency of flights, or even opening new routes to secondary cities in Malaysia, not just Kuala Lumpur. Right? We're talking Penang, we're talking Johor, we're talking Kota Kinabalu, for example.
But what about lesser known places, you know? You mentioned Penang and Johor and things like that. Are there lesser known places sort of not off the beaten track, but away from the main trunk road and things like that? No, are we focusing on this also? Because you also have a lot of tourists coming in from Singapore who are driving in, you see. Maybe they want to go on the food trail. Are there other such destinations we are focusing on?
There are. I can't name all of them offhand, okay? But even... okay, here's what's happening. In the travel scene now, we get a lot of interest for experiential touring. So netizens and consumers on their own, they're already going out to promote places that they are familiar with, small towns, some of which the names are not even known today, and attractions that are new. For example, if we're talking about the northern side of Malaysia, we have this valley, I can't recall the name now, but we have this valley in Perak, all right, where they have fantastic archaeological sites that haven't been opened up yet. But these are places that the local state governments are looking into promoting, creating infrastructure, and just basically telling people that these products actually do exist here.
Okay.
Now, if we're looking on the local scene, there's a lot more demand for cultural products. Walking tours are becoming a big hit now. People are looking more at food combined with culture. So Malaysia is well known for its variety of food, its diverse cultures, and this has become one of the major attractions for tourists landing on our shores.
Okay, talking about tourists landing on our shores, I want to talk about Malaysia's major markets. Which are now Malaysia's major markets, and what are the new potential markets that we should strive to penetrate?
Okay, over the last 2 years or so, a lot of emphasis, particularly by Matta, we have placed a lot of emphasis on China and especially India, because India is a high potential market, and we've seen an increase in tourists coming in from India as well, a lot of interest, right? So India and China are two key markets that we must target and we need to put a lot of effort into. And when we talk about yield, some people say, hey, China is not what you consider a high yield market, simply because of the type of tourists we used to get here. But that's actually not true. In both these Indian and Chinese markets, there are high spenders, people that are looking for the more qualitative aspects of tourism in Malaysia.
But the fact that when you have airlines having so many air links with India and China, that is reflective of the market, the potential of the market there.
Exactly. So again, as back to what I said earlier on, if there was no potential market here, the airlines wouldn't be putting up new routes or increasing their frequencies.
Yeah, Nigel, talk to me about eco-tourism opportunities. My observation is that we have a lot of potential there, but apparently, am I right in saying that we don't seem to have come together to promote with all parties pulling in the same direction, or what do you call having achieved convergence, So what are some of the challenges in promoting Malaysia's eco-tourism? I think we are really full of that potential, but we haven't sold ourselves yet on that sector.
Okay. Look, let's put it this way. Malaysia has been quite renowned in terms of its appeal to on ecotourism, right? You cannot deny we've got a lot of it, right? Compared to many other countries. In terms of the ecotourism products as well, they are very, very diverse. So on one hand, it's not so easy to say let's have a concerted effort to promote ecotourism, simply because of the diversity of the products, right? On the other hand, we've also got this I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's a transition period where our industry and our people, our nation, all right, is beginning to live the talk now. So it's not so much about just saying, hey, come to Malaysia, we've got great, rainforests, we've got a lot of greenery, we've got, Southeast Asia's highest mountain, we've got orangutans, but people are gradually beginning to understand how to live the culture of ecotourism.
But do we have an ecosystem to support that ecotourism?
Correct. So this is where I was coming to. Part of that ecosystem is ensuring that everybody, promotes ecotourism for what it really is: sustainability, sustainable tourism, ensuring there is no waste. This is all part of the wider picture of ecotourism. It's not just green forests and tall mountains, right? Now, coming back to that convergence bit, yes, in short, we are getting there.
Okay, Najil, hold your thoughts, a lot more to talk about travel and tourism in Malaysia. We'll take a short break and we'll be back after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the outcome of the just ended Matta Fair at the PWTC over the weekend. Nigel, talking about this digital marketing, and the Prime Minister did mention that we had to use digital marketing really boost and promote Malaysia. Are tour and travel companies using digital marketing to the fullest potential to promote Malaysia as the main destination for leisure and business? The question is the government or the tourism Malaysia providing support for tour and travel companies to develop their, their digital technology system, which is the way to go for all companies right now?
Yes, actually, digital marketing now is actually one of the fastest technologies being adopted by travel agencies nationwide. There's a lot more awareness on the need to use social media especially, and the travel and tour industry is beginning to pay attention to key online influencers, bloggers, and we're actually in the phase where we're getting to understand these technologies and we're starting to use them a lot more.
Oh, that means we are not fully exploited that potential. We're just starting off right now, just like our SMEs and all that. Okay. The other thing, Nigel, I talked about, I remember talking to the president about a year ago, and he said for Matta to remain relevant, they set up this Matta technology. Can you take us through Matta technology? What does it do, and how has it matured in really pushing Matta's functions and promoting Malaysia as a travel and tourist destination?
Okay, so Mike, the Matta technology platform that we're talking about is actually more than just promoting tourism. Okay, it's actually the infrastructure that Matta has created to encourage the growth of our tourism sector. So put it simply, this is how it works. We have a lot of online influencers nowadays, which are actually not local. So if you're talking about online travel agencies, we're talking about apps like Klook, we're talking about Airbnb, we're talking about e-hailing platforms like Uber that came in at some point, and now we've got Grab. Now all this disruption has basically upset the ecosystem. It has in a way been good and also bad for the industry. And the sectors that are suffering most, the service sectors, are suffering in terms of the quality that they can deliver, because it's a lot of price pushing going on, right? So Matta Technologies was developed to ensure that the legitimate travel agents in Malaysia, Matta members specifically, were able to tap into resources that were not available to them as individual companies, right? So once they had this leverage, then the platform will allow us to be more competitive, allow us to access more inventory and provide better service, better quality, and better value.
Okay, you can provide better quality and all the services and other, but the more important question is that talking about the story about the last week, a family in Kuantan, they bought 5 tickets to London and they turned out to be false. It was a scam. Okay, will this actually be able to prevent scams? Because sometimes they can really offer rock bottom prices, really cheap trips and things like that. So how do we really demarcate between genuine tour operators and scams like this?
Okay. There is no hard and fast answer to that, because of course if you want to cheat somebody, and you will, nothing can stop you from doing that.
Okay.
But there are precautionary measures that you can take. For example, number one, you really should not be going for the cheapest price, because the saying, it's if it's too good to be true, it probably is not true.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So consumers generally are bargain hunters, but to offset that, aside from just looking at the price, once you get the price, you need to do your checking. So you can go online through Google, you can ask family and friends, you can ask for feedback, you can even go to another travel agency.
But does Matta provide any kind of advisory services? I want to refer this person to you. Is it genuine and all that?
Okay, on that note, Matta members, number one, they are all licensed, all legitimate. They are generally very, very reliable, all right? And we've had very, very few, if almost none at all fraud cases relating to Matta. So the consumer, if you generally buy from a Matta member, right, or travel agency, you're more likely to be buying from a legitimate operator.
I see. Okay. The other thing, Nigel, when I was at BWTC and even last year, I noticed the quite significant presence of Umrah Islamic tourism packages. Tell me, how has this sector grown? And for instance, the Umrah Pavilion. So how important is this sector now, and its contribution to GDP, travel and tour earnings and things like that, you know?
The Umrah and Hajj section is very, very important, extremely crucial. It's a necessity, of course, for most of our citizens here, you know. And what Matta has done is, a few years ago, we started the Umrah Pavilion in order to encourage Umrah travel agents to advertise their products and services, and for consumers to come to one place where they can actually search for these services in a safe environment, right? So the recent Matta Fair, we saw an increase. We used to have only about 87 booths in the Umrah Pavilion. We had about close to 118 this time, and we still have a waiting list. So it's very, very crucial to the sector. And the reason why we set up the Umrah Pavilion, again, is so that consumers can come, they can shop in one safe environment, they can compare prices, pick the best value package, and then travel in full confidence.
Okay, but you all always have meetings with the government and Tourism Malaysia and the ministry and all that, and budget 2020 is just on October the 11th. Has Matta made any recommendations, any budget proposals to the government?
Yes, we have. In fact, we've made quite a few, but of note, of particular importance would be incentivization to the industry. So we're talking about things like tax incentives, incentives for companies who go digital, all right? We are also very happy with the government's matching grant, the Gamelan Fund. The only thing we're not too happy about is we want more.
You want more, okay, like everybody else,
No, the industry is very excited. This is one of those mechanisms that is going to help drive inbound tourism, because you're empowering the private sector. And private sector, Mike, I guarantee you, once they have the empowerment, they will go all out now.
Okay, but I think it will empower the private sector, and you're hoping for something from the government. But at the same time, we had these departure tax and tourism tax and all these taxes, you know. So would that make our travel and tour sector less competitive, because we know our neighbors and regional economies are also very competitive, you know, fierce fight to lure the investment tourist dollar and tourists into their countries, you know. So I mean, I think Matta has made a lot of representations that can we just sort of postpone the imposition of the levy. So what say you?
Yeah, well, look, we understand that these levies and taxes are there for a reason, and we are given to understand also that a lot of these taxes and levies will be channeled back into the tourism industry. So it is kind of important to have that. But from Matta's perspective, we have asked, and we still maintain that it would be good if some of these taxes could be actually deferred, especially for 2020.
Yeah, because you're going to have 2020, you're going to have 30 million tourist arrivals and all that, and then you impose these taxes. It's like a dampener, you know.
It is in a way, you know, and like I said, if some of these taxes can be reduced or even still deferred, maybe to 2021, it would be a great incentive for the tourism industry.
Oh, I see. What about cruise holidays, Ajala? Briefly, cruise holidays.
Cruise is another interesting product. Very, very crucial. In fact, in the next coming few years, they will probably be as crucial, or if not more important, than the airline industry. The reason is very simple. When a cruise ship docks, we get 40 buses of tourists coming into our city, shopping, eating our food, using our services.
Can I just finally, besides cruise, looking forward, what is Matta's long-term plans to really take Malaysia to the next level in tour and travel?
Okay, for us, we see a huge future in digital. So Matta's focus now, besides everything that it normally does, right, it's to push for digital.
Okay, so thank you, Nigel, for that insight into the Malaysian's tour and travel sector, and good luck to Matta and all his undertaking. I hope you have a better Matta. I think the next Matta will be in March next year again.
It will be, yeah.
I think you have better receipts and all that, sir. So that's all for Biz Talk tonight. Until the next time, bye for now.